Hello, and welcome to Coffee Time. Coffee Time is a space where magical humans come together for some real talk, strong coffee, and powerful introspections on whatever is top of mind right now. My name is Natalie, and I am your host for this channel and today's super exciting conversation. The idea behind Coffee Time is that you are in your favorite coffee shop, maybe cozied up with a book, and you begin to listen in on an intriguing conversation between folks at the next table over. For that reason, there is no big introduction. We absolutely let the conversation speak for itself. And if you do want to know more about these special guests following today's episode, I invite you to check out the show notes for more details. So, on that note, let's dive right in.
Hey,
Hi, how are you?
great. How are you?
I am doing good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I woke up oh god, naturally at 6:30 this morning and like tried to fight it for a bit and then was just like, "You know what? I'm just going to make coffee and read in bed and like take advantage of this." So,
There you go. Yes.
it was good. Where are you located, Rebecca?
I am in Houston, Texas. So currently recovering from the snow-pocalypse.
I've heard about this. I truthfully didn't see too much of it myself because like I don't have cable or anything, so I don't get
Oh
much
yeah.
news. But I'm also on the west coast of Canada. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I've seen the odd things. How are you doing with all of that?
Luckily we're doing good. I lost power for a couple days. But my parents down the road didn't lose power, so we went there and my brother and his family went there. So we actually got like some extra family time. It turned into a really nice thing. So I'm
Oh,
glad.
good. I'm glad you
Uh,
have that support nearby.
Yes, I am so grateful. I lived in Little Rock, Arkansas by myself, just me and my boys, for a few years, and it was exhausting. So now, anytime I have family close by, I just get so excited. It's
Yeah.
been
Oh,
great.
that's awesome. I lived in, I mean, I was a student at the time, but I lived in Toronto for 5 years and now I'm back west. But I live about a 10-15 minute drive from my mom's house. And I mean, we
Nice.
still, especially with COVID, like we don't see each other all the time because we're both doing our thing and, safety and whatever. Um,
Mhm.
but it's nice just to have a parent nearby for those days where something happens or you just having that extra and like I have health issues, so knowing that there is someone close to me I could call if something happened and vice versa, like it's something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is so nice.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
I've been
that's good.
grateful.
Good.
But it's like sunny and 60 today, like nothing ever happened.
Of
So
course, right? That's pretty much
it's
how here
really
goes too. We'll have like a month of rain and then it's just beautiful again. And the thing is, like, everyone who sees Vancouver probably sees pictures when it's like nice and sunny. And I mean, in Celsius, like 20 to 25 degrees, and there's a brisk ocean breeze. And I'm like, but 3 months of the year, it's gray and raining at least 3 months of the year.
Oh,
Like,
man.
yeah.
Does that affect you, do you feel like? Like, do you get kinda depressed during those times?
I find it affects my energy for sure.
Mhm.
I think I have like how do I explain? I think I have enough kind of grounding in the perspective of what's happening that I don't my mood doesn't get so quickly impacted. I think just because I'm able to be like, it got really dark out. I am tired. This is why. And I can kind of like explain it away in a sense.
Mhm.
But I definitely notice it. And I think especially the last couple of years, I've really noticed it. I don't know if there's been a shift since prior to that or what it is, but it definitely gets to me. And it's mostly the fatigue, though. Like the winter months, I find it
Mm.
really difficult that way. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, I can imagine. I mean, just if it's, like, cold for a week here, I get all funky, so
Well, and I don't mind like cold to me is nice sometimes. Like when I was in Toronto, it would be super cold, like really cold, but it would be sunny. And like
Mhm.
that, I mean, the cold is difficult to be outside in, but I didn't find that impacted my mood. Whereas here, it's sometimes still up to like 10 degrees, which I don't know what that is for you. I feel like that's probably like around
Yeah, for sure.
55, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay,
I think
yeah,
like
that sounds about right.
40s is around 8, 8 degrees, and it's a weird calculation. Anyway, roughly that. So it's like fairly
Mhm.
mild, um, but it's just gray. And that's what really gets me. And I think the other thing too is that the rain, I mean, people go out in the rain. I find it less desirable. Um,
Mhm.
and so there's also the impact of just being inside all the time, which is something to consider, I think with COVID too, that's been a big part of it, was just being in my own
Oh,
condo
yeah.
too much and then realizing, no, I need to go for a walk, and eventually felt safe to do that, but for a while I didn't. So there was definitely the mental impact there too. And I think it's kind of comparable actually, how the winter kind of
Yeah,
impacts things. Yeah. Yeah.
for sure.
And
That
then
makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
yeah, this week was well ending today, yesterday, Mercury retrograde. And
Oh, yes. Hallelujah.
I I don't put much weight on those things because I'm kind of like life would just go on if I didn't know this information. I don't want to be. Oops,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm dropping essential oils. I don't want to be like oh, Mercury retrograde's coming up, so my life is going to look like X, Y, Z. But I
Mhm.
did definitely notice I was very depleted, and there were factors to do with work and whatever. So there was part of that, but it was extra. Um, and I
It
am
was
starting to feel a bit better, but it was hard.
good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm kind of the same way. Like, I don't religiously follow it or like expect things to go wrong because it's Mercury retrograde. I just kind of like to know that it's happening. And I again, I didn't really pay attention, but I had a rough week, like emotionally. It's
Oh yeah.
probably part of the snow-pocalypse and all kinds of stuff. But there was just so much happening in my head. And then seriously, the day Mercury went direct and I saw something on Instagram, I was feeling so much lighter.
Yeah.
I was feeling so much better. Like, okay, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. No, totally understand that. For a while too, I was noticing like. Also, are you cool with oversharing of personal information?
It's kind of my life. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so warning to anyone who watches this. Um, I have an IUD. I've had it for 5 years. I have the kind that
Mhm.
has made it so that I just haven't had a period for that whole time.
Oh
Um,
wow. Okay.
However, I noticed about 3 years ago, whenever it was Mercury retrograde, I'd get spotting. And I was
Interesting.
like, what? And I literally, that would happen. And I'd be like, I wonder if it's Mercury retrograde because I didn't follow this stuff at all. And then I'd look it up and it was. And it like directly correlated, which I thought was super weird. But like I said, correlation, not causation, but it was an interesting observation. That was a lot of rhyming. Yeah,
We could turn it into a little Dr. Seuss book
like
for
my little
spiritual people.
slogan now, making a bumper sticker or something. Um, but it is. It's interesting to just observe those patterns and like I
It
mean,
is.
I always create these segues like unintentionally, but I think on that topic, you're into human design and Reiki, and I'm really curious about the intersection of those and how they work together. But I think that's also been one where like I'm not big into astrology. I'm not big
Mhm.
into like human design, but I did have my chart. Would you call it a chart? Read like
Mhm.
um, a week ago on a recording for the show, actually,
Oh,
and
nice.
same thing. It's interesting to just observe kind of like explaining for me at least like explaining patterns you already see but in a different way, and I think
Mhm.
that can sometimes make it more accessible, and like different ways of explaining it resonate for different people, but similarly like it doesn't dictate your life necessarily.
Right.
If that's my take at least at this point, but yeah, I'd
Yes.
like to hear kind of your take on that too. Yeah.
Well, I love how you said that because I do totally agree. I see some people in the human design space where they're like, oh, well, I'm a generator with a defined heart, so I really need XYZ or whatever. And it's like, okay, let's use it as a way to support yourself, not as like an excuse to behave a certain way or something. Um
Yeah.
and so like you said, like I'm curious, do you mind sharing do you remember your profile and your type?
I remember the basics. And it's funny, actually, on that topic, I kind of want to read you something, if you're
Okay,
open
yeah.
to this, that I
Yeah.
channeled yesterday, 2 days ago.
Awesome.
Because I feel like you might be able to guess part of it. So maybe we can try
Okay.
that. And no pressure, but
Okay.
if you're open to it. Yeah.
I love it.
Okay. So, it said, your purpose is to just be with yourself. You have passed the time of great motion for now and have arrived at a point of pause. It may feel uneventful or less interesting. That is okay. That makes sense given what you have been through, but trust that this phase is just as important, if not more so. This is a phase of trust and alignment, of reassurance. This is where your future is paved, your soul is integrated, and you become self assured that this is your life, your truth. This is a time of absolute existence. Allow yourself to be here. Continue as you have been doing. You do not need to search. You simply need to do what is next for you in the moment, and everything will come to you and come together. Life is not meant to be a chase for you, it is more like a waiting game. And with patience, all that your soul truly desires will come. Wait and you will see.
Mm, that was a beautiful message, by the way.
Yeah,
Um,
it was I'm getting the chills every time. It was a neat one to get as a side note on like the spiritual path because I think a lot of I mean it makes sense to an extent, but a lot of people I know are big into like the research and what's the next thing. And
mhm,
my journey got like rocketed about like 8 months ago, and I just got thrown into everything. Um, but it was never very like you're on this path doing this thing, and these are the kinds of spells you cast, and like off you go. Like it wasn't very defined that way. It has very much been that like natural ebb and flow, and that's like the second or third time I've got that kind of message. This is the first time I've channeled it, but someone channeled it for me recently, and they were like, "You don't need to
mm,
chase. You don't need to define the next thing you're researching. Like you're the kind of person where these things will just come to you, and you'll know."
mhm,
Mhm.
mhm.
And I don't mean to like test you, so I can just tell you, but I'm curious.
No, well, it's so funny that you said that because literally everybody I talk to, they'll say something, and all of a sudden, it's like I can just start seeing their chart in front of me.
You're curious, yeah.
Yes, but now that it's like a challenge, I'm like, I don't know.
I can tell you. That's okay. So I hope I have this right. I'm a two. I don't know how to say it. A 2-5 mental projector.
Oh my gosh, I was gonna say projector. I should have gone with it.
It's okay. I trust you.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm a 1-3 mental projector, so this makes
Okay.
me so happy.
Cool. Okay. And I forget the 2-5. I know one was the hermit and one was
That's the
something.
2.
And what's the 5 again?
The 5 is like a natural problem solver,
Okay. I
essentially.
mean, that makes sense. I stay at home and do logic puzzles. So, yeah. Um,
Same.
there you go. Cool. Okay. So, yeah, when that message came through, and since I had the full like reading done last week, I was like, oh. And so it's
Yes,
interesting
all
to kind of see where that plays into my spiritual growth as well. Yeah.
over. Yeah, that's perfect because there was a lot of like just chill and things will
Mhm.
come to you.
Yeah.
Like that's very projector and it's so hard. So I'm curious your perspective because I know for me, like especially in our the world we live in and the like Nike just do it. And
Yeah.
if you cared about it, you go out and make it happen. It's like that's exhausting.
It
And
is.
so
It's
has
so
that how does
exhausting.
that feel for you?
Whew. I think getting the message felt good, and I think it does kind of lend itself to something that a friend said to me back in August when I went through an uncoupling, and my one of my best friends since high school like looked at me and they were just like, you can just let it be easy. And I think that
Mm,
kind of goes along with that. It's just like
mm,
allowing myself that space and that pause, and realizing I think that that can be actually quite constructive. For some people, maybe not, but I think for me, like a lot happens in that pause and in that space. And so I need to carve that out. Like that's really important.
mhm.
But it's interesting when you say the problem solving part because I was like, oh, is that why I fight against it? So it's like I feel a natural inclination to be doing, like actively engaging and exploring and like whatever. And I think it's that like little bit of a battle inside to kind of figure that out.
Well, that's the fascinating part to me. There's so much duality as a human, and human design kind of gives language to that in certain ways, especially inside of the profile. So yours with the hermit, like you need time alone to integrate. So like everything you just said, you need that time to just be and to integrate all those lessons. And then the 5, you essentially need people, or like really they need you. Honestly, is what it is, and to help solve the problems, to help give your sense of wisdom. And so it's like this back and
The
forth
struggles of
thing.
an empath intuitive. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Yes. So having having strong boundaries with that and learning the fascinating thing for me was knowing that all of my centers down below were undefined, and so then it made
Same.
sense why I would pick so much up. So I'm curious for you, do you have the crown and mind together or the mind and the throat?
Um, oh yeah, mine is like third eye throat.
Okay, yeah, that's mine too. Yeah.
Okay. And then nothing
Um,
below is defined. Does that make sense? Yeah.
yes, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, we're it's very similar in a lot of ways. And I get really excited when I meet other mental projectors 'cause I'm like, this life is hard, man. Like,
It is. It so is. And it's like it's been interesting. Actually, I've been so this is a thing that happens. My mind goes, there's like a web, and I actually was
yeah.
with someone last night and I paused and I told them this. I was like, I will pause and I just need space for that because I'm tracing these things to figure out what context I need to pull from to like make my point. But there's so
Hmm.
much of it that it doesn't just happen naturally, which it
Hmm.
technically should if you look at like AI theory versus how humans do that. But anyway, um and at a certain point, they looked at me and they're like, I can see the wheels turning. Like they could see it happening. And I think that's been something that's challenging because I don't engage with people the way that a lot of people expect me to. But that's why I've had multiple people in my life ask if I am on the spectrum. Um,
Oh my gosh, I talk about this all the time. Like,
okay.
I swear being a mental projector puts me on the spectrum. Like, sometimes people talk about stuff.
I'm
I mean,
really
not
curious about this.
necessarily like,
Yeah.
yeah. But okay, so yeah, see, I just did the same thing. I love that you did that because I was a junior high coach for a couple years and I coached basketball. And so there would be a couple of times where I'd start talking to my girls and then I would just stop and they'd stare at me and like, just give me a second.
Yep.
Um, so yes, no, it's so interesting you said that. I was just talking to someone about this the other day
Okay.
because just some of the things seems to correlate with how I show up in the world. Nobody's ever come to me and said that. When my son, who is a projector, he's an emotional projector,
Mhm.
when he was younger, someone, his aunt was in med school and took an abnormal psych class and then diagnosed him with autism.
Of
And so
course.
it was a
Yeah.
whole thing. Yes. But he's fine. But it's like looking at, I mean, not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He wasn't diagnosed with it. But looking at how he was showing up, it makes so much sense. And it's kind of the same thing where it's
Mm.
like as a baby, he would just take in everything. Like he didn't talk till he was 3, but then he was talking. But he was taking in
Yeah.
everything. And I do the same thing. And so one time I met this single mom who was talking about how her son was in the process of being diagnosed with autism.
Mhm.
And I was like, please let me read his chart. And he's a mental projector. So now, I mean, this is like my one thing that I have. That's it.
Interesting.
But I'm like, it got me curious to look at people with certain diagnoses and
Yeah.
see what's going on. And it's like similar to so many boys specifically are diagnosed with ADD when I don't think they have it.
Yeah.
I think part of it is just boy energy that's a little different than girl energy in younger ages, and part of it is that defined sacral that needs a release, and
Mm-hmm.
they're not getting it when they're being told to sit still and be quiet.
Mhm.
And of course there's girls that have this issues too. It's just historically when you look at the data, it's way more boys that are being diagnosed.
Well, I think it can, I mean, in people in general, but it can present differently in different people too. Like my brother was diagnosed, I guess at the time ADD, and now it's just ADHD or whatever. It changed, I think. But he was diagnosed and like medication and all that stuff because he like couldn't sit still in class, was acting out, was always like rambunctious, like all these things.
Hmm.
Whereas I never got a diagnosis, never got really support around any of the things I was struggling with, to be totally honest about it. And I figured out how to adapt because I had to. And so for me, I threw myself into school, but like
Hmm.
it was so for my brother, his thing was hockey. And I think that's where I kind of lucked out that my interest was like academics because I could just overstimulate myself with work. But it also at a certain point meant like I wasn't sleeping and I'd be like hyperactive in conversations and like my brain is going a mile a minute. And I was
Hmm.
like working full time while in full time university. And like that's how I dealt with it. And then now being a grown up and like going into the workforce and like corporate industries, I've had a couple of people, I think, question me about it. And like one in particular was like, I made a comment one day and she's like, oh, I just assumed you were diagnosed and refused medication. And I was like, nope, like that, because it presents very clearly, and I don't feel like I necessarily need a diagnosis. Um, but it is interesting to observe those things. And when you mention your son, I'm thinking about my niece because her and I are very, very similar. And we just relate on a lot of stuff. And she's 7, and it's interesting. It's very interesting that I
Mm.
just get her. And so now I'm kind of curious.
Mhm.
I wonder what hers is because she's been diagnosed autistic, and I
Mm.
have a bit of issue
Sorry.
with the diagnosis. No, it's okay. I have a bit of issue with it. At the same time, if the diagnosis gets her resources that are supportive, like we're gonna start
Mhm.
equine therapy together and like that kind of thing. Like that's awesome
Oh,
to me.
that'd be
So
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, my instructor
Mhm.
actually, because I ride, my instructor is the one doing the equine therapy, and she has kids with different needs as well. So she's like fully aware of all of that. And her and I get along super well because we're both like the weird introverted extroverts and, same Enneagrams and like all of that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, but no, I appreciate that that connection came up because I've been thinking about it more and more recently, to be honest. I've noticed it more and more. Um, and it can be really difficult. Like
Mhm.
and I know, I think you mentioned in some of our initial back and forth, like healing from childhood and that kind of thing. And that's a
Mhm.
big one I'm looking at right now is recognizing I didn't get the support for those things. And now I'm somehow trying to integrate into the world as an adult. And it's exhausting for one, but it's also sometimes like um really like discouraging
Mhm.
because I don't innately know how to integrate with people who seem to be able to just do this so effortlessly, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. It
Yeah.
does. Well, it's like I look at girl groups. I never had like a bunch of
Mhm.
girlfriends. It doesn't totally make sense to me,
Yeah.
even though I really want it. So, like in certain ways, there's some ways where I can look back and observe and like understand human behavior on different ways, but being a part of it doesn't really interest me.
Exactly.
in
Yeah.
in certain ways. Yeah. Like I don't want to sit around and talk about like which way I should part my hair and which purse I should wear with an outfit. Like just pick one
I mean,
and
according to what I've seen, you have a middle part, so you're with the times, whereas
go. Okay.
I am not. Apparently, I'm supposed to change that and start wearing not skinny jeans, and I refuse.
I've been seeing this whole debate and it's cracking me up because I specifically remember this is literally the first time I was like, I'm just gonna try it and see
Yeah,
how I feel.
that's so funny.
Um, because like all growing up, I loved my middle part. And then I remember having this moment when the side part was the big thing. And
Like
I tried the
drastic side
side
part
part.
too, right? Like,
Yes, and
yeah,
you had to have, like, the bang,
yeah.
and I it was so hard for me to switch, but I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna do it because I probably wanted to be cool." I don't totally remember, I just remember it felt really weird. And now I just kind of laugh. This is another thing that as an observer, it's so fascinating to me to see people get upset about it. Like, why are these young kids telling me I need to part my hair different? I'm like, I mean, you realize you did that. Like, this is just human behavior. It's
Yeah.
the kids are at this point where they're figuring out their identity and they're trying to be cool and they think old people are dumb. Like,
So they're harking back to the 70s. Yeah.
right. Like you realize I was part of this in the 90s. Like all the girls in the junior high, it was in the gym and um anyway, I would see them all in their clothes. I'm like, I could have like just brought my junior high wardrobe and fit in. Like I was there the first time this happened. And so it's a weird thing to be a part of. But yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because literally today I was like, I'm just gonna see
Yeah.
my foster niece. When we were all at our family's house, my foster niece like braided my hair and she put it in a middle part, and so I
Yeah.
was like,
Just roll with it.
okay.
Yeah. I just go where mine goes. I'm not fighting anything. Maybe that.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, like
Yeah.
do what your hair needs to do, and so yeah, I'm like I'm old enough now. Where like I don't care what you think I should do with my
Mhm.
hair. I'm gonna do what I want to do with my hair. I'm gonna wear what jeans make me comfortable. Like,
Or sweatpants.
right?
Yeah. If I've been told to just wait here until the next thing comes, I may as well be comfy doing it. That's how I see it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, let me just wait until the young kids tell me what to do next.
Right?
No, I'm good.
Also, I did want to mention, like, I like that we both are covered in crystals and also wearing like the same color green.
Oh,
Because my
yes.
pants are that same color and I have it on my nails right now.
Oh,
And they
perfect.
don't know. I also have my other one here and my bracelet and my
Is
earrings.
that selenite you have?
This is Amazonite.
Oh, oh my gosh. Oh no. Sorry, my other one is Amazonite. This one is Labradorite, and
That's what my earrings are. I have labradorite.
okay,
These big ones,
yes,
and then
it's my favorite.
I think this is smoky and rutilated quartz, and then potentially more amazonite, but I'm not actually sure. It's
Okay,
related something, I think.
beautiful.
Yeah, with a
Yeah,
little elephant, but
I have, and I'm like covered. I have a selenite lamp over here for
oh,
my
that's awesome.
fish, and a Labradorite ball like sphere,
Ooh, pretty.
and yeah,
That's one of my
I,
favorite stones, honestly. It's the one I
oh my
always gravitate towards. Yeah.
same, same. I have so much Labradorite. It just makes me happy every time. One time, so for a while, I did this job where I delivered groceries to people, and I went to this super rich, fancy house, and I walk in, and they have an entire table. Like the top is just solid Labradorite. I was blown away. So I was like staring at it, but
That's
the
my
people that lived there, they weren't the ones that answered the doors, like the maid and the cook and everybody. I know.
That's special. Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm just gonna soak this in, see what this feels like for a second, and
Mhm.
try to not drool on that table.
Right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I have to wonder too if they realize how, like, powerful it is, or they're just like, "Oh, it's pretty, I'm gonna buy it." Because, like, I'd be
Yeah.
cautious having something that big and that powerful in my house, like,
Same.
right?
Like that's so much energy, especially Labradorite energy. That's so much.
See, I find it
So,
really grounding. I know
mhm.
it can be, like, very psychic, like, psychically active,
Yes.
but I find it really grounding, and I have what do I have in my bed? It's, starts with an L as well, Larkavite? Like, something like that, combined with labradorite, like a pillar thingy.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
but I have it by my bed, and it's fine. Like it feels good. I think it's larkavite. I think. And but when I bought it, this dude at the store was like, "Oh, don't buy that. That's gonna like." I bought one and it shattered, and I was like, "I think I can trust my instincts of what crystal I'm meant to have right now, but that's fine." And
Right?
they do different things for different people. But labradorite for me has always been really felt really grounding and really good that way.
Yes. No, I'm the same with you. Like I had a Labradorite ring I wore for like 3 years straight
Mhm.
until one day it just felt like it was time to move on. Um, and and I'm wondering because okay, I'm thinking with us with all of the openness, like that is a very psychic connection. It's got a lot of stuff, but I think that helps us to not be too overwhelmed by everything that's coming in. That's how I feel about it. Like that with that specific one, because yeah, it's like it's some form of protection. I always feel more protected when I have it around me.
Yeah, it's what I've used until I got like tourmaline. At least it's what I've used for protection. Oh, show me your
Yeah.
crystals.
Well, it's funny you said tourmaline because I have this one next to me all the time, like in my
Like,
pocket,
yeah,
with me everywhere. And there's a couple times where I'll put it somewhere and I can't remember. And I swear it talks to me. I'm like, I
yeah,
just
they do.
stop. I'm like, tourmaline, where did you go? And then I know exactly where it is.
I love that. Well, when I go into stores, I just do a loop and like wait and see what I gravitate towards. And usually I find I'll find it and then I'll look in my book and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Okay.
It's perfect. Yes.
Like this one I got when I was in Whistler in August. And as you probably know, but like Amazonite is for like it can be like seeing both sides in like a situation and
Mhm.
specifically to do with the heart chakra and all that. And it was the weekend I was supposed to get married, was at the place I got engaged, and uncoupled with my former fiance. So I was like, no wonder this is the only crystal in that entire store I touched. But I didn't know what it was at the time. I was like, oh, I think I meant to have this, bought it, and then found it out. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes, and with that green, yeah. That
Yeah.
mhm.
Um, but with that, I do really want to know, like, how do you tie in Reiki with human design stuff? And like, if it helps to relate it to like our human design characteristics, go for it. But whatever makes sense for you. Yeah.
Well, for me specifically, what's helped me a lot, so I've been a Reiki master longer than I've known about human design. And one thing that I would do with Reiki is that I would just constantly basically shoot out Reiki. And it was always with the prayer of let it go where it's needed, where it's wanted, where it's desired, where it's helpful. Not trying to force anything on anybody, but it's with the idea that if I am shooting out the energy, then I'm not taking in what I don't need to take in
Mhm.
because then there's no room for it, right? And so then when I got the human design chart and realized all the openness that I have, it made so much more sense.
Mm.
And so for me, uh, it's it's just like this intuitive thing that mushes together that I don't really have words for yet.
Yeah.
But with the with Reiki, we work with the chakras, and there's the seven chakras, and there's nine centers, but it's just like the spleen kind of
One's
split
behind
off
me.
from the root.
That's my chakra wall. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And the identity center comes, from what I've read, some say it's just part of the heart chakra, like the heart chakra kind of split to the heart center and the identity center. And
Mm.
then some say it's part heart chakra, part solar plexus.
Okay.
So it's been interesting trying to work with that.
Mhm.
Um, but it's more like wherever there's the openness in people's charts,
Mhm.
it's like I'll kind of shoot the energy there when I'm reading
Okay.
it, trying to figure out what's going on, and then kind of it's I don't know how to explain it.
I think that makes sense. I would assume, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm thinking right now is like, because when you say openness in people's church, that's like the undefined centers, right?
Mhm,
Is that the wording you would
mhm,
use? So like my thought, at least if I'm conceptualizing in terms of me being like an empath in
mhm.
those open spaces, which for me like heart, solar plexus, whatever, like I take
Like
on
all of
other
it.
people's stuff.
Yes. Yes.
And I feel like it reminds me of like a lot of the like clearing, grounding, protection meditations. You're flushing all
Mhm,
of their stuff out and then
mhm,
filling it back up with
mhm.
the energy that is a bit more like supportive and genuinely like yours and like from ether, like whatever, however you want to word that. So the way I would see it is kind of helping to like recalibrate those undefined centers so that they're more
Yeah.
supportive of someone's like well-being.
Yes, I feel like that was a beautiful explanation. I should just keep you
You'll have the
around
recording,
to
you're
help me.
fine. Yeah.
Because yes, it and what fascinates me too with these undefined centers is that's where we're the most vulnerable to conditioning, but it's also where we're here to be the most wise. And so it's like the fact that our wounding could be our wisdom is so beautiful to me.
Mhm.
And so you do like, and I know that I did before I understood what was happening. I just took on so much
Yes.
stuff. And there were a couple times I had like random psychic moments with people and I didn't understand what was happening. And it's just a lot. And so
Mhm.
to have the chart for me specifically gave a visual to what I was feeling and it helped make so much sense. And so then I knew where to kind of focus the energy.
Right.
And then for other people too, there can be a lot of hurt inside of those undefined centers. There definitely can be within the defined as well.
Mhm.
It just seems to happen more so with the undefined because it's a lot more vulnerable. So so yeah, like you said, being able to clear out, like give away to clear out what isn't yours
Yeah.
and to fill it up with source, with authenticity, with pure energy, light and love, so
Mhm.
that you can tell the difference, then
Mhm.
that's huge.
No, I love that. Yeah, and that, I mean, that makes a lot of sense for me because I find the one thing that I've noticed the most is where, I mean, yeah, my mind is telling me the thing. Objectively, I know what to do, but I don't know how to interpret the signals I'm getting from like my core and my
Mhm.
heart. And when I say signals, I mean like physical sensations. Like I am very much still learning how to discern what those mean. And I think that connects to like trauma as well. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
is this love or is this trauma bonding? And like trying to figure that out. And like I
Oh my gosh, yes.
I got
And
it
and
wrong. So yeah.
my bad.
Oopsie. But it's, yeah, it's a lot of like reteaching myself those things, and I think for me, I have to intellectualize it, like it,
Mhm.
and given my human design, maybe that makes sense why it becomes more of like an intellectual pursuit, and like there is definitely the part of like feeling and leaning into that, and like allowing myself to sit with like emotions, which oh god, I'm not very good at. Um, but it starts with the intellectual and the analysis because that's what's accessible to me. Yeah.
Yes, well, that's the only thing we have lit up, like, that's our motor, is our mind. And so that's why talking out loud is so important, or journaling, whichever way you can get it out. I find for me specifically, if I have a couple of people I can trust, and this has given me language because I have a lot of shadow with this, where like a couple years ago, I was going through a really, really hard time and I would talk about it a lot. And then someone in my life I was talking to got really upset because I wasn't like taking their advice or something. And they were like, you just don't understand how exhausting it is that you're just putting all this energy on me. Like, it's selfish of you to put all this energy at me and ask me to take it. I didn't ask you to take anything. I just need to talk. That's
Mhm.
it. Just need to get it out of my brain. Otherwise, I get stuck in there and not it never ends up well. So having safe people to where I can call and be like, "Hey, I just need to be a mental projector for a bit and talk out loud about some stuff. You got
Yeah.
some time?" They're like, "Yes, let's go for a walk." So
That's funny. Problem is, like,
having
my
somewhere,
5
yeah.
would kick in, and I'd be trying to, like, solve all the problems, and then I'd get tired. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, for you, that's a good one. And probably I'm curious what gates you have as well, because like mine, I have this one gate, like the gate of rationalization, and it's in my conscious sun, and so it's like very prominent, and it's like I'm
Mm,
always wanting to figure out the how. And so the more I dig into my chart and really understand my chart, it gives me more compassion for myself. So when I'm stuck in this loop of figuring out how, I can just laugh and hang back and be like, okay,
yeah.
like this is gate 47 freaking out. It's fine. Like, let's
Yeah,
just take a minute.
funny.
And go back. And so it's like when I talk about it, then it's almost like the thoughts materialize into something completely different, and I'm able to see a different perspective or hear a different perspective. I sometimes I feel like it's like my words go out and then bounce back, and then I can like hear myself from their perspective somehow. It sounds weird, but it helps me
No, not
to
really.
like dissolve
Yeah.
things. So
No, that I mean, that makes sense. To me, it's funny when you say the bounce back, because it reminds me of, like, the first time I talked to trees, and they fed me the perspective of them. So it came out as, like,
mm,
me saying "you," but it was like I was talking as the tree. So similar, like, the weird that bounce back, like, that reminded me of that. But it was hard to explain to people what was going on because they were like, "Are you like you?" And I was like, "No, the tree." But they told me that of them, like it was that kind of a thing. Yeah, that makes any sense? I don't know.
it
Yeah,
makes sense to me.
there you go. That's all that matters. Yeah.
Well, like my poor aloe, I had this beautiful aloe, and it's so big, and it's like a mama aloe, and it had all these babies, and it's in a big pot, and I couldn't bring it in during the frost, and so I tried my best to protect it, but it just, mm.
Oh,
And
thanks.
so I've
I'm
been
not
like
good with
giving it
plants.
Reiki.
Have you
I like
tried
talked to
tourmaline?
it. Have tried what?
Have you tried tourmaline with your plants? Black tourmaline?
No, I just hold mine all the time. But I have a lot of quartz. I lived in Little Rock and we would go crystal digging,
Okay.
and there was just like an hour away there was a crystal
I've
mine.
heard of this place
And
actually. Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing. So I do put a lot of quartz like at the bottom of my plants, and
Maybe try black tourmaline.
I'll try that. I just had to
I
I
put it in
talked
front
with
of
a
mine and I haven't actually had to water it or anything since I put the black tourmaline in there. I don't know.
that's
But
awesome.
when I read about black tourmaline, it says it's actually good for plants because it helps keep pests away and like does something else. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like helping your plant and warding your home all in one go. So I was like, okay,
I
why
love
not?
it. I'll have to add that. Yeah. I
See
think
what
I'm gonna it needs all the TLC it can right now.
yeah, poor
Um
thing.
But yeah, no, I just to say that sometimes I feel like my plants talk to me. Like
Yeah.
I'll do some Reiki and I'll put my hands on it, and then like I had a rosemary plant, and every time I touched it, it was like I got this image of a terracotta pot. I didn't have it in a terracotta pot, and it wasn't doing well. So then I looked it up, and it's like that needs to be in a terracotta pot.
Interesting.
Okay.
Okay. See, that's cool. Yeah, I don't interact with my plants as much as I maybe should. I definitely like trees. Trees are a thing
Mhm.
that I visit often, but my plants, they probably need more attention from me. It's just not a thing I've ever been into. I started getting them, and some of them are doing okay, some of them not so much. But that's okay. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's fine.
I go chill with them on the balcony sometimes. And it's fun. Um, but I wonder, like, could I ask you to, because I love all the rambles we have gone through, but would you be down to kind of share, like, we can focus on us mental projectors, like, kind of your
Mm.
top 3 insights slash tips and I mean, feel free to relate it to the Reiki and the chakras too, if that makes sense for you, just whatever comes to mind.
Like, just for life, for
Yeah,
people?
kind of like general anything. It's like, because I know there's probably at least some people who tune into this who are like me and they're like, I know what mine is, but I know nothing more because it's not a thing I've looked into. So, like, would there be kind of a general starting point that you would offer as guidance that you're working?
Oh, okay. For,
Yeah.
like, human design and, like, nature chart. First of all, the first thing that just comes to me is to just really look at it as a beautiful way of understanding yourself and other people. Like, it's a wonderful way of loving other people where they are, and knowing that we're all so different. And like the first thing I did, of course, was look at my kids' charts and then my ex-husband's chart, because I'm like, what went wrong here? And I started to understand him
Yeah.
even more and get even more compassion for him
Mhm.
and see the energetics of what happens. So it's a tool for compassion and love. It's not like, kind of like we talked about in the beginning. Don't think that just because you're one thing means you have to fit into the a box of that,
Mhm.
because there's over 2 billion configurations. Just because we're both mental projectors, we have different profiles. That means we
Mhm.
present in life in different ways,
Yeah.
and we have different gates, and we have all kinds of stuff.
And now I
So
want to look mine up again.
yeah.
I'll let you know what it says when I check it out after.
Yes, please do.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Um, so
Mhm.
yeah, look at it with compassion and love, and that that's a huge thing, I would say. And it's like, it because it can be a rabbit hole. It goes so incredibly
Yeah.
deep, and so you can kind of get stuck in things.
Mhm.
Um, especially I have a one in my profile, and that's like the investigator. They need to get to the bottom of things to feel safe. So
Yeah.
it's a lot. Um,
Makes sense.
and then also knowing with the undefined centers, kind of like we talked about. I just want to reiterate that that's both a source of, it can be a source of conditioning. It's also, we're here to be really, really wise. So don't think that anything's wrong with you, especially for reflectors who their whole chart is white. They they don't have any defined centers. They just have some
Mhm.
gates. And I've only met one reflector so far, and she looked at her chart and was like, "What's wrong with me?" I'm like, nothing. This is
Yeah.
amazing. And so now, when I reframed it for her, now she'll go around and tell people, she's like, I'm incredibly wise. I have all white on my chart.
That's
she
so
she
beautiful.
is hilarious and she cracks me up. So
That's
knowing that anything can be reframed, like this, nothing is wrong with you. There is no such thing as right or wrong. There's no one way to be. So it's just really looking into your strengths and honoring your strengths, and then
Mhm.
knowing that other people have that as well. It's
Mhm.
beautiful. And um trying to think of the last thing that might come to me. I don't know. I think that's, I know you kind of mentioned, we kind of mentioned at the beginning how it's like we don't really dive into stuff. Like you said, you weren't really into astrology. I wasn't really either. And this was just a system that really, really spoke to me. And I think it was mostly because of the mental projectorness. And it just gave me so much permission to
Mhm.
be myself. And I guess that's the last thing, is that every time I've done a reading, there's this moment of, so I'm not crazy, or I've never felt so seen. And so it's this beautiful permission slip to be exactly who you knew you were supposed to be this whole time, before any of the conditioning came into play and before anybody put any of their stuff on you, which happens. That's part of being a human on earth. It's just part of the journey. And so, you know, just loving yourself inside of that permission slip, and knowing that there's going to be conditioning to get out of, and that's fine. There's going to be deconditioning. That's, again, part of how we learn to love ourselves even more and how we learn our soul lessons. So it's totally fine.
That's beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. And like, yeah, I love that, like, permission and self-compassion, those two notes I think are so powerful. And like also just that, like the same, like you said, like we've kind of talked about it a couple of times, but just like it's that take what you like and leave the rest. Like if it feels supportive,
Mhm.
embrace it. And if it doesn't resonate, that's okay too, because there will be another way in which to interpret this thing called life that does
Yeah.
resonate for you. Like I feel like that's kind of, as we're talking through this, that's kind of what this realm of, especially like new age spirituality has become, is like it's a bunch of different languages about the same thing. And we're all
Yes.
kind of like flicking through the file cards, trying to figure out which one makes the most sense to us. Like, which one can I learn the most easily, or do I like the syntax of, or like whatever it is. And I think that's really cool. It's just we're finding the language in which we want to interpret and tell our story.
Mhm.
And it's really
Yes,
beautiful.
exactly. It's beautiful. And that yeah, that's what I love too, and that's why it's like that's why there's so many different systems
Hmm.
because there's so many different kinds of people
Yeah.
and it's beautiful. It doesn't it's I grew up in the church and so I have some shadow of like, well,
Yeah.
you're wrong
Yeah.
and I'm right. Like, no, we're all okay. We're all on a journey.
Yeah.
It's fine. Let's just love each other.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's so beautiful. And like, thank you again for sharing all of this. It's been really fun connecting.
It
And
has
also with
been. Thank
another
you.
mental projector who understands the struggles. So thank you for that
Yes.
as well. Yes.
Yes. Anytime you need some mental projector attention, let me know.
Likewise. I appreciate it so much. Thank you and stay safe post Snowmageddon.
Thank you so much.
See you soon. Okay, bye. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Coffee Time. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if today's show resonated, I invite you to drop into the comment section and share whatever personal introspection came up for you today. Anything you can do to help make the show more accessible is super duper appreciated. Until next time, I am your host and coffee drinking companion, Natalie, wishing you a beautifully caffeinated day.